Hello and welcome to the All Fashion Talk Show. I'm Zsaneta and with me today I have Brian from Debretts. Hello Brian, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine.
That's
now, Debretts, as you very well know, we use a lot of the furniture that you have in your shop right across the road every single week. We run across, pick it up, run back and deliver it back to you. Now, antique furniture, tell me how you got into this business, when? I'd like to know.
I was a civil servant, but I'd always had a very strong interest in antiques. I think primarily because I was fascinated by history, and though you can't make people concerned because they're all dead, you can own or handle things that belong to them. And I think that was what brought me into it. I was also lucky in that my own family had lots of old family pieces. We've been here in Australia a long time. And I was the only one of my generation who was very interested. So my great-grandparents and grandparents, I ended up with lots of things that belonged to them. And that led to just a general progression. And then I used to collect avidly for myself, and other 2 or 3 friends said, well, would you buy this for me? Would you buy that for me? Which I did. Then another friend said, well, why don't you go into business? And as a consequence of that suggestion, I did, and I've been doing it ever since.
When did you actually start? What?
35, 40 years ago.
Along this strip?
No, first in Maribyrnong Road and then in Mount Alexandra.
So you've outlived, how many did you say?
Well, probably 19 or 20, perhaps more. Outlasted them, but outlived. They're still alive. But their businesses aren't.
Well, the business has outlived the rest of their business, that's what I meant. Okay, why have you outlasted all of them, Brian?
Well, I think we've changed. Early days, people were purists. They wanted, certainly they used to want English mahogany and walnut. Australian cedar was not fashionable. Then Australia cedar became very, very fashionable. It moves in cycles. Now, of course, it's moved again. People tend to live in smaller homes, so they don't need elaborate dining room tables and drawing room suites and candelabras, as we once did. But we've adapted, or we've tried to adapt to the change. We went from...
And you have. You've been successful.
Well, we've survived.
You've survived.
We went from what I would consider to be a fairly prestigious antique, certainly the biggest on this side of the river, and when we sold that building, I stayed on and turned to a market concept. For example, we have things from 50 cents to $15,000, $25,000, $30,000 right across the board.
And they are antiques?
Oh yes, they're antiques. If they're not antique, we would tell you.
Antiques as if they've been around...
Well, it depends
what would you call it.
It used to be 100 years. But now people collect things that 40 years ago. Now they're very interested now in retro things, which is the 60s and 70s. But when I started, that was new.
That was.
But now it's quite collectible. It's more whimsical and eccentric. People look for a certain look. They like things that are shabby. We had shabby chic, and then we went into all over floral, and they had fancy chintzes. It changes as you go along. The young people, each generation changes even more. And so you either swim or sink.
Excellent. So that's why you've been here for so long. I suppose you've just kept up to date.
Well, one's tried to.
Just before we spoke about royal families, and I'd like to know more about that. When you said royal families, did you mean that you have you contact them because of their antique furniture?
No. I've met them in an entirely different capacity.
Okay, but you don't go and purchase products?
I have bought from royalty in India, but no, I've bought a number of things that belonged formerly to royal families, but generally of dealers in Europe. But not direct from the families concerned.
Okay, fair. Okay, now we didn't speak about the name.
Debretts there's a publication in England called Debretts Peerage, and it lists all the titled families in the United Kingdom. It's almost like an encyclopedia of the aristocracy. And we call it that because we originally used to go to England and buy from stately homes, country estates.
You went to England, purchased everything, put it on a ship,
and brought it back. And we tended to look for things that had some provenance. I remember one of the largest collections we bought was the Earl and Countess of Northesk, and we bought a lot of their collection when it was sold and brought it back. And hence the name. We were trying to associate the name with good quality and old families. We've just kept it ever since. It used to be called Debretts World of Antiques, and then when we started the market, it became Debretts Antique Market. But that's what Debretts
means.
Yeah. In effect, an encyclopedia of the blue bloods of England. Interesting.
Very interesting. Antiques, to me, are always in fashion and never out of fashion.
That's true. But there are classes of antiques that do go out of fashion.
And
antiques.
which are the classes that do go out of fashion?
Oh, it comes and goes. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, Royal All Over Floral China, which was a middle of the road china when it was produced in the 30s and 40s, it suddenly, you'd be paying $300 and $400 for a teapot. And that lasted probably about 12 or 18 months. Then the factory started producing reproduction Royal Witten, and people were not too sure whether it was the plate or was it real, and then it became cheaper and cheaper.
But
now,
as you said,
now things that were once $300 or $400 one can buy for $30.
As you said, the younger generation don't mind spending only $500 and not the $5,000.
If it's not so much the younger generation, but the older families in Australia have already got their antiques.
Right.
And the newer families that are coming up, if they can have a look that looks like an antique for $500 rather than spend $5,000,
yeah.
That's right, they would much prefer that, particularly the Europeans. They would very much prefer that, and they're also
the copies.
Yes, well,
the copies,
a lot. I know Europeans, particularly from Italy and Malta, who believe that the furniture's haunted. They think that if it once belonged to somebody else, there might be a curse on it. So, I mean, I'm quite serious. People do believe that. So they want antiques, but they want new antiques. That's exactly how they describe it.
Well, they don't want the old antiques that somebody else has been sitting in, wearing in.
That's right.
I sort of know where they're coming from and why they'd feel like that, but have you ever had a ghost in your shop?
No.
No.
I've had one in my house, but I've not had one in my shops.
What? Well, we won't say that. Even if you have, we won't tell. So you're saying the new, the Europeans.
No, not yet. Well, mainly European people want new antiques. They want the look, but they don't want anything shabby or anything that's been used.
And it's cheaper.
Well, much cheaper. And you can get a beautiful vision for a fraction of what it would cost if it were all the real thing. And that matters not. As long as the effect is there, that's all that matters. There was a lot of those people who've made their money here, and they've worked very hard to get their money and to be admired. But they're very careful too.
Of
I mean,
course.
people blame anything. And certainly some of my clients have told me that back in Europe, they could only look at the furniture that they have here in museums or in homes that you paid to get into.
And never be able to afford it.
Never, ever.
No.
And now they've got lovely homes and cars and things they never dreamt of having. And of course they want their houses to look the same, which they do, but they want value for money. And to them, reproduction is value for money.
When I was in your shop last year, you had a couple of antique chandeliers from Egypt, was that?
Yeah, they come from one of the royal palaces in Cairo.
Did you actually go over there?
No, I bought them here. After the
What's
revolution.
the history behind those? I was just amazed by the iron and the way
They were Gothic revival. It was probably about 1860, 1880, which was very fashionable. Anything that looked medieval was in fashion. And of course, Egypt was governed by Britain, and British taste was exported to Egypt. And the Egyptian royal or ruling classes copied. They adapted English styles to their own, and that belonged to, I think it was a cousin of the king, a palace which has since been pulled down, and they were bought and sent here.
How much did that chandelier go? Did you end up selling it? How much
No.
did it go for? Or how much? What's the price tag on it?
I think there was a pair. I think it's
There were two of them.
7,000 for the pair.
7,000 for the pair? What's the most expensive bit of furniture that you've sold, say from Debretts, from the very beginning, that you think, well, that was a great sale, being a real antique piece?
Well,
because I watch the Antique Roadshow, and just some of the prices that I see on furniture, you think, is it worth it?
I would think probably 25,000, 30,000.
And what was that?
It was a court cover, a beautiful court cover.
It was an antique.
Oh yes, it was the
from England.
Oh yes.
Did you actually go and buy that piece yourself, or?
And no, it came in. We sold it on consignment. It belonged to a private person here who asked us to sell it for them.
That's right. That's what Debretts does.
It does, yeah. I did have, that was expensive, 24,000, 25,000. That was a bookcase that had been made for King Leopold of Belgium. It was in the residence in the Belgian Congo with all Stanley carved in, all in wall. That was magnificent. So we had some nice things. Nice French stuff.
You have some nice things now. You laughed at that. Why? You think it?
I don't know. Well, it depends what some people think is horrible. Other people think are nice. It's all personal taste.
It's all personal taste. Yeah. Yes.
Now it's more eccentric. It's more whimsical. It's more curious.
Well, you have to keep up to date with
well, that seems to be the trend.
What the consumer wants.
That's right. And hopefully we've done that.
And you have. Okay. Thank you very much for today, Brian. and you're watching All Fashion. Thank you.
Do this when you and I have no makeup on.
Fine, say hello. What is going on?
There's that total happening behind there.
Have a look. You can record all that.